about either Heather or Stephanie when we're no longer being recorded that I can use for future times. Anissa, we'd appreciate that greatly. So over to you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks. Yep. Kick it over to you.
Oh, no, that's all right, Stephanie. Thank you. Thank you for having me. As Stephanie said, my name is Anissa Vega. And this is either an introduction or a warning. I'm an associate professor. So despite being an academic faculty, you still wanted to hear me speak. So that's fantastic. I also serve as KSU's Assistant Vice President for Curriculum and Academic Innovation. And I have to confess that I was a bit nervous to speak to this crowd. And so I was imagining, much like I have seen a young, hip group who know better than to use a colon followed by a lengthy subtext as a presentation title. But Stephanie assured me that you were all nerds like me, so that made me feel a lot better. So I appreciate that. So today I'm going to talk to you about the new role that's emerging in higher education and K-12 as well over the past decade, and that's the Academic Innovation Officer. So I started this role at KSU in November of 2019. And to get started with that, I really spent those first 2 months just researching and networking with other academic innovation officers to learn all that I could about what it would take to be successful in this role to help my institution evolve. So as a professor, of course, I have to bring up a little bit of literature. As a researcher, there's not much literature, though, on the role of the academic innovation officers. And at the start of the pandemic, there was actually only one paper by Bishop and Keene, and they had produced that out of a summit that they had done out of the University of Maryland and collected some survey data. Universities are known for innovation. There's no question about that. We research, we produce new products, new solutions, and we even launch new companies. And these innovations are pivotal to changing all kinds of things about our society. In fact, university research was foundational to the work that was done with COVID vaccines that are now available and in action. And to manage all of those types of innovations, universities and colleges are launching innovation incubators. But these innovations are not academic innovations. These are business innovations, engineering innovations, innovations in arts, public policy, and medical innovations. They're not academic innovations. And Bishop and Keene defined academic innovation as really includes the efforts to improve student success by creating optimally effective learning environments that simultaneously increase access, affordability, and quality in education. And this is really what happens when an educational institution turns that innovative energy that's going outward and they turn it inward to produce novel solutions to advance ourselves, our institution, our products and processes. And so academic innovation is really an internal process. So in that definition by Bishop and Keene, access, affordability, and quality were really important. And that's really because these are components of higher education that have been heavily critiqued lately in the media. And so to this, I would add, let's see how I can, relevance. Relevance has also been critiqued. So with access, we want to be sure that everyone can enter an institution. We want to be sure that they can afford it and that those degrees are leading to jobs and well-paying jobs, that the quality of our instruction is high quality and enjoyable for our learners, and that our institution and the degrees and the graduates that we produce are relevant to the modern workplace. So we've started working as academic innovation officers on particular innovations that address areas in these 4 areas. So when looking at innovations that you see happening all across the US related to access and increasing access, we see admissions pathways being innovated around adaptive courseware, flexible scheduling. work experience credit, dual enrollment, prior learning assessment, and blockchain credentialing or records. When it comes to affordability, institutions are really trying to implement open educational resources. They're trying to develop corporate partnerships for a work-learn experience. We're trying to scale our processes and products through massive open online courses. We're using predictive analytics, and we're trying to create a leaner curriculum. When it comes to the quality of instruction that we provide, some innovations that you see happening in institutions includes adaptive learning, learning analytics, master courses, virtual reality and augmented reality, active learning spaces, gamification, personalized learning. And then when we talk about relevance, what are some innovations that we see in action now? That includes competency-based education, micro-credentialing, alternative degrees. Here in Georgia, we now have something called the Nexus degree, and it's past an associate's, but not a bachelor's degree. We've got interdisciplinary degrees and e-portfolios. Our goal as academic innovation officers is to change the academic systems, the systems of academia. And so that's really the big picture that we're working with. And it requires expertise in these three areas: in change management, academia, understanding the role of academics and the process of teaching and learning, as well as the system of higher education as well. So that doesn't mean that there's not a lot of people on campus working to lead academic innovation. It's just with this new role, you see that academic faculty are being plucked out of the faculty role of teaching, research, and service, and they're being recognized as a change agent with potential to influence the stakeholders across campus. They're being It also helps if they have experience or knowledge in recent advances in tools that we use for academic innovation, and that includes data, automation, or the learning sciences. And so I come from the area of learning sciences, and so that's where my expertise have been contributing. Let's see. So I spoke to, or I actually asked about 24 different institutions. I reached out to their academic innovation leaders, and we're really asking them exactly what does it take to be a successful academic innovation leader or officer. And so I got to talk to about 18 different academic innovation leads, and these were the common threads that they gave me as advice as to what I should do moving forward. The first one is access to multiple teams and units across campus. And this was the most common piece of advice that they gave me. It was really that the academic innovation officer had to be at the university level in order for systemic change to occur. If they resided within a department, an individual unit, or a college, then the innovation would be limited to those environments, but also it would limit who would interact with that individual. So if I need to interact with the CTO and the CTO's team, then I need to be able to have a relationship with the CTO and ask him or his team for a meeting, and the meeting occur. Whereas when I was a faculty member, it's unlikely that any of the VPs would have quickly responded to an email from me asking them for a meeting, with the exception of our provost, of course. The academic innovation officer also needs to be sure that there's senior leadership support, meaning the president, the provost, and other VPs have expressed an interest in creating change on campus, systemic change. And that needs to be expressed clearly in writing, verbally, and shared with different levels of leadership and constituents across campus. The institution needs to have established goals and measures. And you see this really successful at Arizona State. The president of Arizona State was known for setting goals based on specific measures. So maybe there was a DWFI rate that they wanted to change, and that he wanted to change, and he would set a specific goal in a time frame. He didn't tell faculty how to go about making that change, but gave them the resources through an innovation team to test and try new solutions. There also needs to be space to test and fail quickly. So I just heard today earlier in the Future Trends Forum, I was listening to the president of Southern New Hampshire, Paul LeBlanc, talking about how he had created a small innovation space where they were testing specific new models related to competency-based education, let those fail quickly if they needed to fail, but also by having this separate space to test, everyone else could kind of look over the fence and see what was happening and build interest without feeling required to participate. There also needs to be an investment in centralized resources to assure that the innovation supports the entire campus. So that's similar to this first item, where it needs to be at the university level rather than at an individual unit level. You can invest in a very expensive innovation that will only benefit a single department, but when you're trying to make systemic change, and that's really the goal of the academic innovation officer, you really want to be sure that you have centralized resources addressing those innovations. Access to data. This is really critical, and this is just the modern environment that we're in. Data can help identify and diagnose challenges that are facing the institution, and then you can use that data to get a post measure to see the success or failure of innovation during beta testing. And so this is really important to help identify failures early on. Also, faculty incentives, and then protecting faculty from failure while working in those innovations. So faculty incentives might involve incorporating innovation into the tenure and promotion process, but they shouldn't be penalized if an innovation fails, especially if they recognize that failure early and then pivot from that. And when you're working with tenure and promotion, it's always very sensitive as a process, and so it's important to have a clear understanding of how that incentivizes faculty to engage in these innovations. There also needs to be access to a custom software solution team, someone who can help you get those different systems from the various units across campus talking to each other. And then finally, the individual has got to be able to establish functional collegial relationships all across campus at all levels on campus. So you've got to be social, you've got to be engaging, you've got to get out there and get to know folks and be ready to help them on their projects, just as they would be willing to help you on your projects. So some of the places that academic innovation officers go to, possibly they hang out here with all of you, which is a great idea. But you can also find they will often go to attend EDUCAUSE. That's one of the general conferences that can attract many of them. But frequently what you'll see is that based on the innovations that they're working on at that time, they will pick a conference that aligns with that particular innovation. So right now I'm working on digital micro-credentials, and so I'll be attending IMS Global. They have done a lot of work on open badging, and so learning all that I can with their conference related to that. If you're looking at scaling learning, teaching and learning, then the Coursera's Partners Conference is a great conference to go to. If you're looking at open educational resources, then the Council on Library and Information Resources is a great conference to attend. The Hailstorm is a group of invitation-only academic innovation leaders who have not really solidified this group yet, from what I can tell. I have not been invited yet, so hopefully I'll get that invitation soon, but I think that they did not actually meet during the pandemic, which is when since I've been in this position. So so those are the various groups, and HAIL, I believe, stands for Higher Education Academic Innovation Leaders, and so that's the group meeting there. So at KSU, this year I've been working on 3 different innovations. First is the double OWL pathways. This is we have a challenge here at KSU in that we attract really great, bright students, but they get lured out by top, I mean, KSU, of course, is a top institution, but by very competitive institutions. So you'll see them leave their senior year, junior, senior year to go to Georgia Tech often. And we wanted to find a way to help retain those students, to keep those very best and bright students that we have here at KSU. And one of the ways to do that is to create an accelerated bachelor's to master's pathway. And so this is also addressing access for those really talented students, but also creating an affordable option for them in that they get to overlap 9 credit hours from their undergraduate to their graduate degree. And it also increases the relevance for those students who maybe are getting their bachelor's degree in a passion subject that doesn't necessarily have great career pathways after, but maybe they want to lead into the Master's of Science in Information Technology or the MBA or the Master's of Arts in Teaching. And so we've created pathways for those students. Another one of our current innovations is micro-credentialing. We're working on this. We're not quite to launch yet. We've just decided that we're going to use Badger specifically. We're developing a tagging system that goes along with our taxonomy that we've developed for our institution. And this is supposed to be a way for us to recognize students for the skills that they're getting, whether in class through assignments or through internships or possibly through work study. But we've also created level, lower tiered of these badges that will help us, that we're calling ribbons and tokens, that will help us track student engagement data as well. So hopefully we'll have that may launch by the fall, or at least that's our goal. And then the third innovation that is on our plate right now, we're still in the research and investigate phase, and that is learning analytics. And this is really to address issues of quality. And what right now what we're looking at is what are our options. So we know that we could build a custom solution. We could possibly work with our LMS provider to see how we can customize the solution that they offer, but we're still in that investigation and research phase for that particular innovation at this time. And then, since part of my title is curriculum, we're always working on creating a leaner curriculum that increases affordability and quality as well for students. Okay, so that's the presentation on the new role of Academic Innovation Officer. Do you have any questions about the role or about what KSU is doing in terms of innovations? Thoughts? Lessons learned that I can learn from you?
So I will let folks in the chat kind of jump in here, but as always, myself and Heather and Dave probably have some questions for you too. And obviously I have a little bit more intimate knowledge of the work that's going on maybe than some others, but specific to the Learning Analytics project, I know that you have created an additional role or identified some additional folks that you may need to bring into the team to help facilitate that. And certainly, this is something that I think many people are going to have to manage, right? The ask that we're seeing, that I'm seeing across many accounts, is around data. In Microsoft terms, a lot of folks are trying to use Power Platform, Power Apps, Power Automate to accomplish some of these things. And so just curious about if you can describe the role and sort of the amount of energy and output and prioritization that requires from someone.
So the new role is called the Academic Data Analyst. We have an Office of Institutional Research. They are great with data. They're gathering data out of our student information system, out of our student tracking systems, our systems that integrate with the University System of Georgia, a lot of census data out of that group, but they haven't had the bandwidth really to tackle the data associated with teaching and learning, specifically out of our LMS, out of our grading tools and our media system, any of those instructional tools, we're not doing anything with that data unless an individual faculty member is using that data themselves from within their course. This individual, hopefully, the plan is that they will help us navigate building what we want that infrastructure to look like. Are we going to throw everything in SaaS, or are we going to try to do something else, right, with Microsoft products, or any of the other tools that we might have available to us? And we're not sure yet, but we're in the process of hiring that individual, and hopefully their expertise and experience will help guide exactly what that pathway looks like, based on the tools that we have available to us. And but we're hoping that what will happen is that we can do better at getting course level data from today in front of faculty's face, so that they can do something about the students in their classroom right now, or the content in their classroom right now. Because what we've historically done with our assessment data is we pull it at the end of the year. Maybe it's from some key rubrics, from a few key assignments. We do some analysis on that, and then we make a plan for how the program needs to revise. It's so separated from the daily experience of the faculty member who has the power to impact student learning immediately, to turn something around. And so our goal is to make that assessment process more meaningful by getting the data closer to the faculty member at the time of action.
Yeah, love that. And maybe in closing, and if other folks are at an institution where you have an academic innovation officer that you're working with closely, would love to have insight from you as well. But I think that the bridge built, to Marge's point in the chat, between academia and those in IT that support the innovation that's happening is so important, and something that can't be overstated, because one enables the other, and it is a tandem project. So any insight from specific to your instance, Anissa, that you've had success in, or I know you talked a little bit about relationship management and just making sure that everyone's on the same page, but would love to hear your thoughts on that, and anyone else that's in the chat as well.
Well, for me, I find that that relationship piece, it really helps if you've had some faculty experience to know how relationships among faculty work. Because we're an odd bunch, I have to be honest with you. We're a little bit quirky, and if you try to ideate with a group of faculty, you have to preface and clarify, we're ideating. This is not things that are definitely going to happen from the top down. And then when you're done ideating, you talk about how do you clarify, this was ideation, this was fun, we've got some great ideas happening and some possible solutions and directions that we could go. But I think it's really important to navigate rumors, which can damage the relationships that will help you be productive in creating innovations on campus. And so understanding how faculty relationships work in order to engage in those conversations is really important.
Great information, great insight as always. I think I'd like to say thank you for being here. Dave, Heather, anything from you guys before we end the recording?
I had one last question. So thank you again, Anissa, for putting up with our madness here. So a lot of us have a lot of varying backgrounds, and somehow we wound up in academia, or we wound up in higher ed, or K through 12. And then a lot of us find some IT component kind of in our veins, and we're all kind of nerds here. How are you seeing kind of the role of an innovation officer bridging that gap of, hey, here's traditionally what we've been doing as higher ed, and all the change that's been forced on higher ed or K through 12 in the last 10 months, and then how do we get that alignment back to where it needs to be, where we're marrying up the change that needs to happen potentially, right? We're teaching and learning, distance learning, hybrid, flex, whatever you want to call it. How do you see that change being initiated kind of from your side in helping the academic side kind of choose to grow into that or resist it, as the case may be?
So right now I see a huge opportunity because so many faculty have been forced to use a learning management system, the resistant faculty who didn't want to do it. And what I have been socializing with them is to remind them that it is a learning management system, not specifically an online learning management system. Talking about how the learning management system itself can continue to serve as a digital teaching assistant. And so now that they're in there, we're already talking about and developing micro-learning events and sessions for them to learn about what the learning management system offers them as a face-to-face instructor. There is a lot of excitement with our very traditional faculty to go back to the tradition that they've been in. But we're also we're planning on how our assessment system, which is required for accreditation anyways, but when we make that more meaningful with the learning analytics, it will be easier for them to do their required things by using the learning management system anyways, and then the nature of a formative assessment then becomes useful. So moving to learning that is always supported by digital tools and how that can facilitate the learning sciences, the process of using data to inform your practice and to improve your materials so that learning is successful. So we're focusing on moving towards that idea that all learning takes place on a learning management system.
Awesome, thank you.
That may not seem like the biggest change in the world, but for traditional faculty, it's a big jump for them.
Yeah. Well, and I think Heather called it out. You know, even just the phrase digital learning assistant shifts the paradigm of thinking around what are we hiring that tool to do? Not to take over, you know, sort of push you out of the way, faculty, but really to assist you in your endeavor.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you again, Anissa. We'll stop the recording and then wrap it up here, but just really appreciate your insight.
Sure.
All right, I think